Hello and welcome to Tales from the Rulelord. It is me, your narrator and Diva Pete. If you already listened to my updates episode, then you've probably already heard this story as well. Nothing about it has changed. This is just the story for those who just want the story. I also found out that canonically, it takes place on the same day on Galarian, the 24th of Sarenth 4720 AR. Thanks to Day in Galarian. So without further ado, please enjoy the tale of Wasps and Whispers by James Jacobs. Mariciel took a deep breath, held it, and let it out slowly as she tried to relax, her arms balanced, palms up, along the chair's slender armrests. It wasn't working. Her belly remained tight and crawling with gut wasps. The nervous feeling in the pit of your stomach that the Church of Callistria called the tingle you get for the trick is all set. But this was no complex prank or long-planned vengeance that had the wasp doing their thing. It was something, Mariciel forced herself to remember, that she'd brought entirely upon herself. Not that bringing nerve-wracking situations on herself was anything new either. There was that time she crawled headfirst into the narrow crevice at the base of that giant anvil altar after Harsk had mentioned how worshippers of Droskar supposedly stashed treasures under immense shrines. Or the time that Valeros had challenged her to a drinking contest on that long trip to Absalom. And who could forget Lem's face when she took him on with that dare to climb to a top of a Hell Knight castle's tower to swap out its flag for a set of ogre undergarments. And of course, there was that stunt she pulled when she'd first met that cute cleric up in Sandpoint, when Mariciel had thrown herself into the thick of a fight against a pair of ghouls in order to show off that there was more than one way to destroy undead uprisings. Thinking back on those antics did the trick, and Mariciel sighed in relief as the gut wasp settled down. After all, the cache of magic potions, scrolls, and talismans she'd recovered from the Under Anvil stash ended up saving the day not long thereafter when those smoke-bearded undead guardians had risen up against them, hadn't they? Never mind the fact that it was the pilfering of the temple treasury that got their attention in the first place. And good old Valeros still thought she'd won the drinking contest fair and square and bragged about her fortitude to anyone who'd listen. As far as Mariciel was concerned, some quick sleight of hand on the drinks was only playing to her strength anyway. It was only cheating if you got caught. And those insufferable Hell Knights had that heraldry redecoration coming. More to the point, everyone she told the story to agreed that ogre undergarments looked better on a Hell Knight flagpole than any dull old flag. And as for that ghoul slaying gambit, the fact that Mariciel knew those filthy old ghouls wouldn't be able to paralyze her didn't make the stunt any less risky. She'd managed to avoid any serious bites, but after finishing off the last of them with a dagger to the dome, she'd emerged completely covered with claw marks and a bit dizzy from blood loss. Of course, the dizziness only got worse when the cute cleric swooped in to catch her as she stumbled and began to heal up her wounds. Mariciel had been tempted to kiss her then and there, but those pesky gut wasps had gotten in the way. Still, she must have made an impression on Kira since that first kiss came not so long after. Better than the dragon's whole treasure hoard that moment, and just like that, all the work she'd done to banish her jitters went out the window. Just thinking of Kira had brought back the gut wasps. Mariciel couldn't help but wonder, was the woman she loved experiencing the same jitters herself, just one room over? She couldn't imagine it. Kira was always so calming, so stable, so confident. And for that matter, the Church of Serenray probably didn't call it gut wasps anyway. Maybe sun gut? Angel acne? Dawnflower jitters? The Healy heaves? The last notion brought a giggle to the elf's lips, and the nervousness of that titter startled her. She reached down to give her wheel ribbon a rub, but of course that didn't help. She'd given the yellow and black Callistrian ribbon over to the High Priestess for use in the ritual. Mariciel was out of the chair then, pacing the length of the room as she ran over her part in the ritual in her head. Here, surrounded on all sides by Serenite art and iconography, she couldn't help but feel inadequate. What place did an elf with no family, A thief and a smuggler, a part-time worshiper of the goddess of trickery, vengeance, and pleasure have in a place as beautiful as this. What place did she have at the side of one of the most kind-hearted and understanding people she'd ever met? Merciel pushed those doubts aside, reminding herself that while she'd spent most of that night a week ago building up her courage to suggest she and Kira take part in a heartbound, Kira had surprised her by making the suggestion herself. This whole plan wasn't technically Mauriciel's own, despite the months she'd taken researching the ritual and preparing for it. Kira had been the first to suggest it, after all. Mauriciel's nervous thoughts kept returning to the what-ifs of the pending rite. She and Kira, as the focus of the magic, would only be secondary performers in the ritual, but that didn't mean their part in activating the magic wouldn't be important. She knew that Kira would be performing her part of the ritual using her knack at knowing the right thing to say, but Mauriciel had to rely on her skill at knowing the ins and outs of society as a whole. As with any ritual, there was the potential for backlash, but the descriptions of the jitters and shakes and dulling of wits that struck those who failed to perform a heartbound properly didn't seem all that much worse than the gut wasp she was already dealing with. And of course, if all went according to plan, they'd have more than a cherished memory of the declaration of their love together. They would be connected on a level even deeper than before, able to sense each other's proximity, to share their thoughts and hopes, and would never feel alone. Mauriciel had assumed Kira would want to seal the ritual with the traditional matched rings. In preparation, she'd actually purchased jewelry for the first time she could remember. Plundered or stolen rings just seemed wrong in this case, only for Kira to suggest using Callistrian wheel ribbons to symbolize the bond. Kira must have taken Mauriciel's shock for something other than speechless love, since she'd hastened to add, "Since you pushed to have the ritual performed by my church, it made sense for there to be an element of yours involved." Or at least, that's how Mauriciel assumed the sentence would have ended if she hadn't stopped it with an impulsive kiss. A knock on the door brought her pacing feet and her racing thoughts to a standstill.
"The High Priestess is ready for you,"
came the acolyte's voice. "Okay," Mauriciel answered, blushing as she heard that nervous tremble in her own voice. She took a breath and stepped towards the door. She could already hear the music swelling. Could even hear Sione chiding Valeros to "Quiet down, here they come," from the far side of the door. The gut wasps were back, and worse than ever. And as Mauriciel opened the door, she marveled at how her hand, normally so steady, so precise, was shaking. And then, as she stood at the edge of the room, only vaguely aware of her friends gathered, mostly silently along the walls, she saw Kira framed in the opposite doorway. And a moment later, as Kira's lips moved, Mauriciel heard her beloved's voice whisper in her ear. If the ritual was truly successful, they'd both be able to speak to each other with their thoughts. But for the moment, Mauriciel knew that Kira had cast the cantrip herself. "Here we go, Miri. You look amazing. I hope I don't mess this up. I've got a raging case of gut wasps." With those words, Kira effortlessly soothed Mauriciel's nerves. And with her whispered reply, words meant for Kira alone, they strode into the room together. I hope that you enjoyed this Tales from the Rulelord, read by me, Pete. If you did, make sure to go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts to leave a rating or review. You can support this and other projects by Rise of the Rulelords at ko-fi.com/Rulelord2e. For more ways to engage with us, go to rulelord2e.com and make sure to follow us on Blue Sky at rulelord2e.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube at youtube.com/@rulelord2e. Thank you for listening. And until next session, don't let the rules rule you. And now, here's the community use policy. Tales from the Rulelord uses trademarks and or copyrights owned by Paizo Incorporated used under Paizo's community use policy found at paizo.com/community use. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. Tales from the Rulelord is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo. For more information about Paizo Inc. and Paizo products, visit paizo.com.